anti-Semitic protests. Police begin making arrests in Yale and NYU. Mass arrests and online classes. Pro-Palestine protests sweep US college campuses.
Everyone loves a contest. But sport isn't just about victory and defeat. When the GOATs in sport speak, you hear it first on WION.
You have to play good cricket over a period of time.
I should push myself right out of the damn tournament.
We go beyond the stats. Our stories are quoted the world over.
At WION, sport is part of our DNA. Come, join us on this journey. Weekdays 6:30 p.m. IST, 1 p.m. GMT.
Welcome to another episode of World of Africa on WION World is One. This week we highlight a woman who, through strength and perseverance, has driven from London to Lagos in efforts to create awareness about a borderless Africa. And that it can be done. The story of Pelumi Nubi coming up shortly. Thank you very much for joining us. This week, we begin from one of the smallest nations in Africa, Togo, where lawmakers in Lomé approved changes to the constitution linked to the presidential term limits and how presidents are elected, which some opposition politicians and civil society groups have denounced as a constitutional coup. Togo's parliament had already adopted the amendments on March 25th, but the reforms led to an opposition backlash, so President Faure and Gnassingbé called for further consultations and a second parliamentary vote. Here is our cover report this week.
The conundrum in capital Lomé began when lawmakers adopted a new constitution which moves the small West African nation from a presidential to a parliamentary system. This will enable the parliament to elect a president for a single 6-year term and not the public. Commotion set in as security forces broke up press conferences staged by opposition parties and civil society groups.
Trop, c'est trop.
Enough is enough. It's over. We're going to fight. Everyone knows that they violated Article 52 and 59.
People in Lomé shared opposing views on the country's new constitution, approved by Parliament, and before they could contemplate what was happening, the government through its spokesperson made this announcement.
Following the decree adopted today, the electoral calendar is rearranged as follows. Date of the legislative and regional elections, Monday, April 29, 2024.
Eventually, the lawmakers gave final approval to a constitutional reform switching to a system that opposition says will allow President Faure Gnassingbé to extend his grip on power. Under the amendment, power would shift to the new post of President of the Council of Ministers, a kind of prime ministerial role, who would be the leader of the Assembly's majority party.
We do not recognize this constitution. However, if they insist and present it to us, at first, we say it is very simple.
So no one can say that everything is done to ensure that the President of the Republic, if he were to become the President of the Council tomorrow, remains indefinitely in power. The National Assembly, it is the majority of the National Assembly that determines who will be the President of the Council.
Celui qui va être président du Conseil.
The approval came days before April 29th legislative elections in Togo, where the opposition has criticized the reform for creating a new Prime Minister-style post they say will allow the Togolese leader to avoid term limits to stay in office. The Togolese head of state had already amended the constitution in 2019, allowing him to reset the time period and run for 2 new additional mandates. President Faure Gnassingbé has been in power since 2005 after succeeding his father, who himself ruled the small West African state for nearly 4 decades after a coup. Bureau Report, WION World is One.
South Africans go to the polls on May 29th, with elections falling nearly a month after the 30th anniversary of the first post-apartheid elections held on April 27, 1994. South African leaders will mark Freedom Day on Saturday, April 27th, with pomp, ceremony and lectures about the sacrifices and achievements of the African National Congress, or the ANC, in its long struggle for liberation. Ahead of the election in May, the ANC is likely to lose its parliamentary majority for the first time since Nelson Mandela led it to power at the fall of apartheid 30 years ago. A survey showed opening up the prospects of coalition rule. Here's a report from Johannesburg.
The ruling ANC, which spearheaded the fight against apartheid, has remained in power since the end of white minority rule in 1994. But overall, the country's palpable excitement during the first democratic elections is unlikely to be mirrored in the upcoming polls on May 29th. Many in the country accuse the ANC of failing to deliver on its promises. The ANC's image has been tarnished in the past decade by economic stagnation, rising unemployment and repeated corruption scandals involving its top officials.
We have reached agreement this morning between the government and the National Party, the KwaZulu government in Inkatha, and the African National Congress, which will result in the participation in the election on the scheduled dates from the 26th to the 28th of April of the Inkatha Freedom Party throughout the country.
A survey shows the ANC is likely to lose its parliamentary majority for the first time since Nelson Mandela led it to power, opening up the prospect of a coalition coming to power. The survey of voter opinion in February by Johannesburg-based think tank, the Brenthurst Foundation and the Sabi Strategy Group estimated support for the ANC at 39%, down from 41% in October and 44% in November 2022. Its current leader, President Cyril Ramaphosa, has tried to clean up the party's reputation and revive the economy since replacing Jacob Zuma in 2018, but has struggled to make much headway. Political cartoonists and caricaturists are thriving in South Africa 30 years after the end of the repressive apartheid rule. The upcoming general elections are also giving fresh new material to these talented artists who have no qualms about holding political figures accountable.
The next 5 years is going to be unbelievably scary. I mean, because we can sink so far that, you wait like 6 years for the next lot to happen. We may be gone by then as a functioning country. When you look at the indices, the Corruption Watch and all these indices at the moment we're sinking.
At the grassroots, 30 years after its first multiracial elections, the mood in South Africa is decidedly less optimistic. The Ubisi family does not have running water at home and the streets of Lilydale are unpaved, although it is less than 3 kilometers away from luxury game reserves where tourists pay thousands of dollars per night. Jobs are scarce and many young people get sucked into crime. Vote Ubisi, his real name, still plans to cast his ballot in May, although he declined to say which party he would vote for.
My hope for the future is to see our community being successful in terms of service delivery, running water, and then the pavement in our society. Because when it rains, sometimes the vehicles or the cars are struggling to get in because there is some mud and it is too wet.
Over 3/4 of the Brenthurst Sabi survey's respondents said they would be happy with the coalition government. Analysts say losing its majority might jolt the party to do better on service delivery, expand the economy and address other ills like crime and corruption. But coalitions could also end up being fractious and impede already poor service delivery. Bureau Report, WION World is One.
A growing number of states in Nigeria's conflict-hit northern region are setting up community-based vigilante patrol units to tighten security in villages where violent killings and kidnappings are rife. Fatigued by the ongoing Islamist insurgency in the northeast, the country's security forces have struggled with limited resources in fighting armed gangs active in remote locations, where the government is largely absent. Here's a report from Kaduna.
In Nigeria's northern city of Kaduna, just 100 kilometers from where 300 school children were kidnapped and taken into forest enclaves last month, a local vigilante group called Civilian Joint Task Force is up and running. Its goal is to protect local communities from armed terrorist groups. A survivor of a kidnapping attempt, Emmanuel Audo Bature, says he joined the group to help protect his community.
I joined the CJTF because of the fact that the kidnappers have been rampaging this community, and there was a time I was also kidnapped, and as a victim, I was taken to their camp and I spent a week in the camp. It was not the funny experience. I was really beaten, threatened to be killed.
Fatigued by the ongoing Islamist insurgency in the northeast, Nigeria's security forces have struggled with limited resources in fighting armed gangs active in remote locations where the government is largely absent. These vigilante groups are believed to have an advantage over state security forces in that they are intimately familiar with the territories and forests where armed gangs operate. Their objective is to provide security in villages with no state security presence. But many of the groups are poorly equipped and they function largely without any oversight.
Up to 80% trust us with what we are doing, even though there are some political reasons why some people will not trust us, because some people are having interest in these insecurity issues that we're having, and those who are having interest, I don't think they will support us. Why? Because what we do, we don't wait for anybody to give us any order from anywhere. Once we see what is happening is wrong, we just engage and see how we address the issue.
Experts on terrorism caution that the proliferation of these groups may eventually lead to easily accessible weapons being grabbed by bad actors. They say that terrorists are only trying to use kidnappings to get the attention of the government.
If you don't control these guys that are carrying arms to protect their community, I think criminal elements will capitalize on that opportunity and explore that opportunity in their criminal enterprise. So I think the government should, give these guys effective training. If need be, they want to permit them to carry out arms. They must be trained on weapon handling and soft arms handling, so that they don't use that gun to turn around and kill their own people.
With the federal government in charge of policing and the military, state governments are increasingly turning to community vigilante groups to secure villages dominated by gangs. Despite lacking resources and training provided to state security forces, these groups remain committed to their communities in difficult circumstances. Bureau Report, WION World is One.
You're watching World of Africa on WION World is One. Time now for a short break. When we return, we tell you about the tribulations that the queer and the LGBTQ plus community are facing in Ghana. Stay with us.
Economic turmoil and global unrest have cast a shadow over President Joe Biden's approval ratings.
The rockets are continuing to be fired by Hamas in Gaza, although at a slower rate than previously.
So, right now, we are with the volunteers from the Aleppo municipality. They are still trying to go to the rescue for the people they can find out.
India has emerged as a major diplomatic force at the world stage.
The rising cost of living in Nigeria continues to impact citizens from all walks of life.
The citizens of Gujarat witnessed a mega roadshow here in the city of Ahmedabad.
China is South Africa's largest trading partner for 134 years straight.
A domestic aircraft carrying 72 people on board crashed in Pokhara city in central Nepal.
165 injuries have been moved, 61 people are confirmed dead, and rescue operations continue around me.
After receiving an entire season's rainfall in a span of 48 hours, Chennai city has literally been brought to its knees.
South Africa, for WION, World is One.
The stress of our world can take a toll on our physical and emotional health. Here, in New York's Catskill Mountains, lies a luxurious place of healing called WION Wellness Center. The WION Wellness Center provides 500,000 square feet of natural methods to manage diabetes, hypertension, chronic pain, obesity, depression, anxiety, and other conditions. We use the traditions of centuries-old natural science from India, yoga, Ayurveda, acupuncture, and naturopathy in personalized programs that help you take charge of your own health. A minimum 5-day stay is recommended for best results. Book now at yo1.com.
Homophobia is not uncommon in Ghana, where gay sex is already against the law and carries a 3-year prison sentence. But now the LGBTQ plus community is feeling terrorized. A new bill passed by members of parliament last week will impose a jail term of up to 3 years for simply identifying as LGBTQ plus and 5 years for promoting their activities. And now most of them live in fear of snitches. Here's a report from Accra.
Kwame is gay, and he was punished for just this. An attack by neighbors in 2021 over his sexuality left him partially blind. Kwame is like many others in Ghana. The LGBTQ community here is living in more fear than ever. The West African country's president has refused to sign a harsh bill which would further restrict their rights until the top court has decided on cases challenging it.
To be honest, I don't think there is any future in this guy now when it comes to you understand.
In February, Ghana's parliament unanimously passed a bill that would intensify suppression of LGBTQ rights. People promoting lesbian, gay, bisexual, or transgender identities face the strong arm of the law. Gay sex is already punishable by up to 3 years in jail. The draconian bill only awaits President Nana Akufo-Addo's signature to become a law. It sets a prison sentence of up to 5 years for the willful promotion, sponsorship, or support of LGBTQ activities. And it claims that LGBTQ people pose a danger to children despite the fact that there's no evidence to prove this. Sam Norte George, a member of parliament, is a lead advocate for this, and he minces no words against the LGBTQ community.
So that document is authored and sponsored by the Association of Sexual Deviants and Miscreants, aka the gay lobby. They're a bunch of criminals who are after the innocence of our children, and we must fish them out and name and shame them.
Homosexuality is seen as a spiritual problem in Ghana. Gay men or those suspected of being gay are nicknamed Kodrebesia, a derogatory Akan dialect term to describe a man whose acts or behaviors are considered feminine. In mid-2021, a coalition of Christian, Muslim and traditional leaders backed 8 MPs to sponsor the anti-LGBTQ bill in the parliament. Ghana's finance ministry has warned that the legislation could jeopardize $3.8 billion of World Bank funding and derail a $3 billion International Monetary Fund loan package.
So Islam sees treats it as abominable, it's reprehensible, it's detestable, it's prohibited. In our words, it's haram.
Everybody in Ghana is about to be given a gun and can point it at anyone and just say gay, 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 gay. And they'll be taking you away. So it's very scary. It's very scary.
Financial constraints have stopped some couples from leaving. They have no choice but to continue hiding their sexuality from their families and friends. Bureau Report, WION World is One.
29-year-old Pelumi Nubi, who grew up in London, spent over 2 months driving from the UK capital to Lagos, Nigeria, in her beloved Peugeot 107. She traveled through around 17 countries, including France, Morocco, Senegal, and Sierra Leone. Here's what she learned along the way.
It's the
You know, when I was driving through Europe, going from the UK to France and Spain, it felt like I was just going through one big country, and I feel like that can also be the case of Africa. ECOWAS has started the process in trying to make it, accessible, but I feel like the system is not quite there yet. I was wanting to explore the 2 places I consider home, London and Lagos at the same time, especially West African country. The media sometimes don't tend to put it out there. I tend to be just negative remarks, so it was important for me to just showcase and highlight it as well. So it's just important for me to do this and to inspire other black women, other travelers, that they can step out of their comfort zone.
And finally, on World of Africa, here's a story from Kigali, Rwanda, where disadvantaged children are taking up the sport of fencing.
In a children's foster care center on the hills of Rwanda's capital, Kigali, Patience Wamungu is hard at work, trying to teach the knowledge and skills in the sport of fencing that he has honed over the years. Eagle-eyed, authoritative, and just like his name, he patiently goes about his training session meticulously at Gizimba Memorial Center, muttering the game's terminologies, such as aller and en garde, French words for go and on guard, respectively.
After the genocide, this center was instrumental in empowering the orphans, and many grew sports-wise. So I thought to myself, why not volunteer here and share my knowledge with children of this institution that gave so much to them?
The students, mainly orphans, refugees and children from economically weak sections, are kitted in worn-out gear they borrow for practice from time to time from another professional sports club. Gizimba was established a little over 75 years ago and took center stage as a haven for children of victims of the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi. It is now a social center dedicated to the defense and protection of the rights of children in Rwanda. The focus is mostly on creation of after-school programs.
Like this facing because it makes me happy, and I wish to go to America to win for my country, Rwanda.
Fencing is a good game and I like it. It can take me places and I will make money and pay my school fees.
Patience admits he has never taken part in a professional tournament. That's despite having received the best training in fencing in Senegal. The West African nation has long been a giant in the sport and is currently home to the governing body of the Olympic sport at a global level.
Many people fear this game because they think it's just about knives and swords. But it's a very clean game, and there are many career opportunities in fencing.
Patience is one of only 4 fencing coaches in Rwanda. Watching the children train, he can see that they are taking to the sport with enthusiasm and excitement. They are mesmerized by its compelling movements and technical nuances. Patience is optimistic about the future of the sport in Rwanda and recognition for his students. Bureau Report, WION, World is One.
And that's it on this week's episode of Wild of Africa on WION World is One. Thank you very much for watching. Stay in touch with us. Find us on all our social media platforms and tell us what you think about the show there. And until next time, my name is Eric Njoka.
From the bustling trading floors of Wall Street to the vibrant exchanges of Asian stock markets, WION breaks it down for you to make sense of what's happening. As we reveal the key factors behind events, strategic battles, and the game-changing business decisions that shape the world. We bring you all of this and more on World Business Watch.
Everyone loves a contest. But sport isn't just about victory and defeat. When the GOATs in sport speak, you hear it first on WION.
You have to play good cricket over a period of time.
I actually pushed myself right out of the damn tournament.
We go beyond the stats. Our stories are quoted the world over.
At WION, sport is part of our DNA. Come, join us on this journey. Weekdays 6:30 p.m. IST, 1 p.m. GMT.